Happy morning! Muli, Miss Horizon Chaser para po sa Greening Financial System and the Rule of MDBs and IFIS na kung saan ito na po yung last session sa naganap na roundtable at tinalakay dito yung mga private sector kung paano ma-leverage itong multilateral development banks to support doon nga sa transition to net zero. Kaya alamin natin, the multilateral development banks ay maaaring mag-assist sila sa financial supervisors and regulators na kung saan ay ma-ensure itong financial institutions at ma-manage itong mga climate risk at kung saan ay masuportahan at ma-implement itong mga mitigating measures at masuportahan din itong mga transition at ang maging senaryo nga nito ay ma-minimize yung mga climate risk at na kung saan magkaroon ito ng magandang partnership at pagtutulungan ng bawat mga bangko sa iba-ibang bansa. Itong Asian Development Bank at magkasama ang mga Deputy Director General at ang mga scientists at pag-usapan kung ano ang mas nakakatulong pa. Kaya ito ay mula sa Scaling Up Green Finance to mobilize the funds needed for the transition. Alright, so pakinggan natin itong naganap na pag-uusap sa roundtable at ang moderator nga nito ay si Ms. CATHY na Deputy Director General Private Sector Department ng Asian Development Bank. At kasunod naman dyan yung closing remarks ni Ms. Christine ENGSTROM na Senior Director Designated Finance ng Asian Development Bank.
Of the World Bank also is that over the last 40-50 years, and this is since we have been working with this data, this insurance gap has decreased. So currently we have in OECD or high income countries around 50%, so half of the overall economic loss is not insured. Still 50%, but going back to the 1980s, this was 75%. So there has been progress made on both sides, the supply and the demand side. So obviously that has brought economic value to the people. Now looking at the low income countries, especially at the poorest or lowest income group of people, it is frustrating, that's my very personal comment, that this gap is still between 95 and 99%. So the result is when it comes to natural disasters, and yes, also supported by our data, we see this increasing frequency, intensity and increasing economic losses. That's now on the shoulder of the people, of the individuals and businesses and national economies. And I think this is where we need to find solutions together. This is also where I believe MDBs do play a role. The private sector can't do everything, but also part of the a factual view is that when we look at the supply and the demand side, the insurance industry is interested in growing also their portfolio into the developing and emerging countries, also providing more risk transfer solutions, and we rather see a lack of demand, quite frankly. It might sound strange to many of you, but we have been working together with governments in the developing emerging world on platforms like the Insurance Development Forum, with the World Bank and other developing banks. And it's a very, very hard call to get engaged with governments in those countries. So my message here is we as a private sector and together with the public sector and really in collaboration, we can do much more than we have done in the past, and climate change is an additional stressor and will increase further losses, and also on the humanitarian side of things, so joint efforts are the way to go.
Thank you, Ernst. And yes, I think we all agree with that. The scale of what we are collectively looking into is far too enormous for any one set of institutions, never mind an individual institution, to be able to even consider going this alone. This all has to be a very collective effort, and creative thinking is needed as well. And I think that everyone is aligned on on that. And I think there's some very interesting ideas that we have talked about in this session so far. Asif, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that topic.
No, thank you, Kathy. I was just going to say, I think if I understood Max and Kelvin's point earlier, where they see MDB's role in terms of development of the pipeline, right? So if I understood you correctly, Max, that the issue really is also identifying these assets, pooling them, and then of course to bring them forward, which is also the case that while there is a lot of discussion in terms of the need for climate finance, but when we look at the pipeline of projects, I think there is a dearth of pipeline of projects, which is very, very difficult to find. And MDBs do play quite a big role in this. So far, a lot of our work has been, at least from an ADB point of view, when we are looking at, and again, me being on the financial institution side, working with banks, identifying, helping them put together the green or sustainability frameworks, identifying assets which could be qualified, working in terms of developing taxonomies, raising and financing them to promote green lending. I think the next step would also be that helping these banks issuing the ABS or the mortgage-backed securities, issuing these sustainability-linked bonds in local capital markets to promote, and then being anchor investors in some of these issuances. So to answer your question, yes, I think MDBs should be playing a bigger role in terms of pooling and bringing some of these investments for institutional investors. And we are currently working on it. It is also a process in terms of for us to learn and our clients to learn so that we are able to put some of these structures together.
Sorry, just to add to that, and just to be absolutely clear, we're not saying only kind of institutional investors need to be in the scheme. Obviously, there's a huge pool of capital, but the bank capital also needs to be mobilized more than just say the local banks, but also the international banks, right? And I think as we all know, the standard kind of project financing kind of techniques, which includes credit enhancements on part of off-takers, FX convertibility, and all the usual nice things that we can have in the form of a cover, would be relevant in any climate mitigation or adaptation of project or portfolio of projects, right? So I think just to be clear, when Mike and I were kind of talking about it, well, we gave the specific example of the bond market. That's not necessarily the only source of capital that we're talking about that the MDBs can actually crowd in.
And just to add to that and stress the point, I think it's the international capital. From the perspective, we don't want the risk getting trapped within a certain geography, within a certain country. It needs to be distributed more broadly. If it gets trapped within the local banks that have the best understanding of the risks, that will inherently create more issues. So it needs to be distributed internationally, and that's why we need the international banks to support it.
Thank you. I think that we could probably carry on talking until quite late into the night on all of these topics and ideas. But I am quite conscious of time. I have a clock in front of me here, but
in terms of finding the right answers. May I now invite the Senior Director, Designate Finance Sector Office, Christine ENGSTROM.
I was just thanking the room for not embellishing my title as junk. You guys done it earlier throughout this conference. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for your attention. And I really appreciate everyone's participation here in Manila, which has been great to see you all, and then online. So now's the part where I do the tour de monde of the conference, but it's going to be super short. Because over the last 2 days, I think that we've shared many interesting ideas and innovative approaches to greening our financial systems, as well as discussing the key critical issues around climate change and the financial sector. We've heard about how green investment banks in the US and the UK have provided interesting and targeted solutions to scaling up, green financing, and then catalyzing the private sector. And then just thinking about taking a step back and thinking about, okay, how does that really apply to our own emerging market context? What can we use from these different models as well too? And why were they successful in these countries, and why in some of the other instances that we've had other specialized banks and non-banks, why haven't they been successful? So a lot of good, interesting, I think, ideas to think about. But also critically in terms of kind of the private sector, the real role there of the private sector. And I think the last panel was very good. Thank you, Kathy, and the panelists for doing this, and having a really good discussion about actually, how can the private sector leverage what the MDBs can offer, what can we offer more to help the private sector from a whole range of products, as well as with the regulatory environment as well too. So really important topics there that were discussed. And thank you also, CONOR, for educating us on the protection gaps in the insurance industry, and a really good discussion also about what the insurance industry can do and some of the limitations there, but also how we can leverage the work that they're doing to bring to the climate change solutions. Importantly, and I know that a lot of people here represent the
Alright, so dito na po nagtatapos ang napakahalagang conference ng Asian Development Bank sa buong mundo, at naganap nga ito dito sa headquarters sa Pilipinas, at sa may temang Greening Financial Systems and the Role of MDBs and IFIs. Ito nga ang climate investment at ang SDG financing gap in Asia is enormous, kaya based nga dito sa Asian Development Bank, ang estimate nila ay umabot po ng 1.7 trillion a year na kailangan nila ito para makapag-adjust dito sa tinatawag na climate adjusted infrastructure investment para ma-develop yung ekonomiya sa buong Asia. Kaya naman, buong pagsisikap at napaka-challenging ito sa mga development bank sa buong mundo. At kailangan nila yung operation nila ay makuha nila ng 75% sa loob ng 3 taon, at mapaikot ito at magkaroon na adoption sa darating na 2030 para sa at ang itong climate finance para dito sa Asian Development Banks, na magkaroon sila ng sariling resources na ma-reach out nila itong ambition na $100 billion na before o sa cumulatively sa 2030. Kaya naman, buong pagsisikap itong mga directors sa buong mundo sa Asian Development Bank. Kaya sana ma-achieve nga nila itong mobilizations para sa public and private financial capital at mga scale na kung saan ay itong greening na proyekto na popondohan ay magkatotoo at makikinabang ang buong mundo, lalo na yung pasulong ang teknolohiya, at kinakailangan talaga na mapangalagaan itong ating mundo o yung mga kalikasan natin. Kaya malaki ang role ng mga investors, ng mga namumuhunan para pautangin itong mga proyekto na may kinalaman sa green investments. Okay? So, yan po ang mga naganap sa loob ng 3 araw, at subaybayan lamang doon pa sa ibang mga videos dito sa Happy Morning Show, at meron din po tayo sa Facebook, at patuloy lamang na alamin ito. Kaya na pamanage ng gusto ng Asian Development Bank kung gaano sila ka-organisa at paano nila ito na maisaayos sa target sa 2030. Ang inyong lingkod muli ay laging naghahatid sa inyo ng mga nagbibigay ng mabuting balita para sa lahat, at ma-inspired tayo kung ano pa ang mga pangangailangan natin sa pang-araw-araw na ating pamumuhay, kaakibat ang sensya at teknolohiya, at para sa mga impormasyon na totoo at nakakatulong sa pag-angat sa kinabukasan, ekonomiya at sa sarili natin. At marami pa po tayong dapat na patuluyan na pagsasamahan dito sa ating programa Happy Morning. Kaya patuloy lamang na sumubaybay upang update po tayo sa makabuluhan at pakatotohanang mga balita. Ang inyong lingkod, Ms. Horizon Chaser. Happy morning!
Ito sa ating project, maganda.
My name is Horizon Chaser. Well,